We'd like to call the work session to order, and we have a long agenda, but I'm confident we're going to get through it. The first item is a resolution to amend Lakeview Street District Number 207. The public hearing was set at the last meeting. Do you have anything else to add?
No. This is going to all the residents to invite them to the hearing and tell them what the cost is. It's for 2 lights on Williams. It started with the Neighborhood Watch.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I just had a question about it. In the packet, there's a note on the map that says no planner will need to determine if there's sufficient clearance on poles. And I just didn't know if that happened.
They ended up having to put, there wasn't, so they had to put up a pole.
Oh, I see where, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So one is going on a pole that's there already, and then other one is for a pole.
Did the attorney do the resolution?
No, we did it. Yeah, they sent the old ones.
Yeah, and the only question I have had on this is usually for street lights, W, is that what we want to go by? W? Okay. Mr. Winter, usually for street lights they do a petition, and this was a request of a person from Neighborhood Watch, and they followed the same process. No.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I think for the SADs, there's 2 ways of having a special assessment. One can be by board initiation, by the board doing it. Usually the other one, I think, is by petition.
Right.
Those are the 2 ways I know.
Okay.
This is the second or the third one that we've done this way. We actually did one in this subdivision through board action last year, I think, or 2 years ago. We followed the resolution because at that time we did, because it was a new process. We had Angie. We had Angie work on that, and so we just did the same way.
I know we did it for cameras because safety was one way of doing it. But streetlights are usually by a petition, but as long as it's legally appropriate. And I questioned it last time for some reason, and maybe it's because we always do it the same way in the past, and I'm not saying that's the best way. It's just I didn't know from a legal perspective. Are there any questions on the Lakeview streetlight other than the one that was asked?
Madam Chair, I changed my mind. I have one more. I did notice, and I know this is a request, I read the email from the resident from the Neighborhood Watch meeting, but if you look at the map, we're proposing to put one between, the street names are on here. I just can't read them.
Emerson and
Pasadena, I think. But there's not one between Pasadena and McCartney. And so I was just wondering, because now we're going to have all this, equal spacing until you get there. Is there a reason, or is there not a need? Are there no houses there that need to have more sufficient lighting between Pasadena and McCartney?
I don't know. Let me just kind of give a history. This district started several years ago with the entire subdivision. The prices came in way higher than the residents thought that would be support. So we went back and had DTE, said, look, it's too much. Can you cut out one? I can't remember. We had exactly what we thought would make, and they said, okay. But then what's happened since then? This is the second additional one for them. So this will be the 3rd light and 2 more additions to that original plan. So we just did them at what they requested. So I don't look at, unless it's a brand new one, DTE looks at the whole area and decides those photometric kind of using their standards. But then if a resident particularly, or a Neighborhood Watch group particularly says, hey, we thought that was enough, but it's not enough light, and then we just do them at the request. We don't go back and say, well, look, if we were going to put in more lights, where would you put them up? We don't do that. So they may come up down the road and say, we want one exactly where you're saying.
That's what I was wondering, just if it would be
Yeah.
better to do it now, but I suppose they were all notified, so.
Yeah. And, somebody might say that tonight, and if they want to say that, we could have that redone and redo the whole thing and send it back out and have another notice and just do one all the same, redo this one. But
Thank you.
Public comments? Is there any public comments? The consent agenda, we have the minutes of the May 16th work session and regular meeting and statements and checks. Are there any questions on that? I did want to update the board from the Augusta Township supervisor. They are not proceeding with the event on July 8th, so that's why it's not on the agenda. We did ask those questions, though, that were brought up at the board meeting. I wanted. And then another issue was, in the minutes, a resident asked for, they'd gone to the park commission, then they came here, it was a West Willow, to have a bench with a top on it, so people can sit by the playground, and there are no trees near the playground. So we were able to find one, and they're putting $1,500 towards it because they received a grant for it. So those are just some follow-up items. Attorney's report,
I'll do it at the board meeting.
budget amendment number 9.
the budget amendment is to increase the general fund by $102,325, and that's $34,590 is for the new election equipment. $40,816 is to pay partially for the part not already budgeted for mower, additional monies that are needed, because I think the mower is like 60,000 something. The $1,919 is for the streetlights on William, if we do approve that later tonight, and that's actually a pass-through. But I mean, they pay for that over the years, but we have to front the money up front for that. And then $25,000 is for a variety of furniture needs. And then the $9,350 in the fire fund is for the engineering. The fire station's parking lot is in really bad shape, and the curbs and stuff, and so that's to hire the engineer to come up with the bid specs and plans to redo the parking lot and the structures and the curbs.
Question? Budget amendment. Number 2 is request approval of the First Amendment to the Comprehensive Development Agreement between Willow Run Arsenal of Democracy Land Holdings, which is RAD, the American Center for Mobility, ACM, and the Charter Township of Ypsilanti to extend the right of first refusal to acquire 22 acres of property owned by the township located adjacent to Tyler Pond. Mr. Warner?
Yeah, as you may recall from the approval of the November 4th Comprehensive Development Agreement that actually took place a couple weeks prior to the new board being sworn in, there was a provision in there that granted to RAD a right of first refusal to acquire 22 acres located next to Tyler Pond in the event they wanted to use that property for issues pertaining to stormwater. As of right now, they still are not really sure if they're going to use that property for that purpose. At the same time, we had already negotiated the dollar amount. There's no additional funds to come to the township for that. So it's simply their decision at some point in time whether they would like to incorporate that property or not. And so they had until June 1st to exercise that option. The 6 months has gone by pretty fast. And they're simply asking for that right of first refusal to be extended for an additional 12 months. And my review of everything that's going on out there, I personally do not see any downside to their request from a legal standpoint or a township standpoint as it pertains to what's going on out there in that site. So Because we did not meet until tonight, we did extend the right of first refusal through June 1st through tonight's board meeting. But if you wish to approve that extension, then it will be, going for a year until June 1st of next year.
Other questions on that? Request to amend the cooperative agreement between Washtenaw Urban County and Ypsilanti Township. Clerk Rowe, Doug, have you had the opportunity to review it?
Well, I've seen the amendment. I mean, I think it's just it's only on 2 paragraphs, I believe, if I can do this. So I have no objections to it from a legal standpoint in terms of the language being inserted as set forth in its June 7th letter.
Clerk Rowe?
It was just explained at the meeting I attended when they actually gave us copies of this to be adopted that it was a new language that HUD was requiring to be included. And that's really all they said, so I'm sorry I don't have more information.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a question. Generally, what does I know obviously they spoke about community development block grants and emergency solutions grants and home investment partnership grants, but normally, I guess you could say, is there anything outside of that the cooperative agreement does for the township?
We do, CBDG and home funds. We don't even get home funds. They go to Habitat.
Yeah,
Vote on them.
I think the agreement, kind of just an overview, is you have to sign the agreement to say that you're going to be a partner.
Participating.
To participate, and then you have the right to, normally you don't have to vote on it every year. There's a certain time that if you want to opt out, you can opt out. You have to give them notice and stuff, and then there's a group, there's one representative from every community. It's normally the highest elected person, but then they can also adopt, or they can send in other folks to pick and vote. I think Brenda's the designate to vote, and then myself and Radzik are, in her absence, can vote too. Either one of us that goes to the meeting. And that, and by the more people, they're excited because several other communities, I think, are going to join. I can't remember who they are, smaller communities on the west side, but the more that are joining, the funds are all based on how many people in the population that you're serving, so you get more funds from it. And then the group together decides every single year, each community has so much of their own funding. I think ours is around 160, 180, 190, which is the Community Development Block Grants, and you get to decide based on HUD's regulations. It has to be in an area that is called lower to moderate income. They're designated, and they give you maps of each, if you need those of your community, and what projects, and if you have an idea, you can run it up, and then if they're not sure, they'll run it by the HUD folks to see if it actually qualifies. For years and years and years, we always just did roads. It was easy. We always needed roads to be done. There was always roads in the LMI areas, and just recently, we last 2 years, we started doing the Washtenaw Avenue project to try to get the connecting sidewalks there in front of the old Kmart and down through there, which has been a real struggle in terms of getting easements. And then last year, we said we'd put some of the money towards bus shelters, but even that's ended up kind of a snafu because ATA doesn't care even if you'll pay 100% for them. Their policy everywhere is that you have to have certain ridership. And I think wherever we have that ridership, they're actually putting them this year, if I understood it right, because we were trying to get one at Apple Ridge. And they are going to increase in August another bus route that comes through there, so we may possibly still be able to do down the road. But what else? Playground equipment at Apple Ridge we've done, in Community Center, and we've
That's
done
what we
the
did.
roof. Yeah. So we just look at what we try to do is work with our staff here, Brent and I, and look at what are things that we got to do anyways. Since we kind of moved away from roads a little bit, and and see the things that we have to do and visit in an LMI area and use the funds for that too. It's kind of just, but this has been just the last few years. We get a huge amount of dollars, home dollars, but that's not designated to a specific community. It's agencies that have to meet all these different regulations, and Habitat is one, and so they get anywhere from $300 to $500 to $600,000
Avalon
a year in Avalon housing, because it's all for lower income kind of housing. So it's our ability to put together our $150,000 with all that money that enables Habitat just to do a lot more programs. Then there's an area of emergency funding and stuff too that people can apply if they're income eligible for things like roof repairs, weatherization, and the county handles that. Yeah, and it's not like anybody in the county that meets those qualifications, income level. And then there's rules like they won't put it into rental housing. They don't, they try it. And they're also supposed to check because we ran into a problem because they'd authorized funding in a house that we had condemned. So now they changed the policy. So every community that's going to get funding for those kind of home improvements, they have to check with that specific building department just to make sure there's not any kind of issues why the dollars shouldn't go in there. And, they check to make sure it has, the taxes are paid. So we're not funding something that's going to end up, the person's going to lose their home anyways, or that they don't own the home. And so that list is really long, I know. We just approved one at the last month, which they don't traditionally do a home that someone doesn't live in, but because a couple bought a place for their, I'm sorry, I'm going on too long. Anyways, they'll fund that. They fund a lot of different stuff, even though different things come up, and then if it meets the rules, they'll bring it. Anyways, the board votes on all that funding, that group that's there, which is pretty big now. When we first started, it was just Ann Arbor and us, and the city of Ypsilanti, and Pittsfield, and Superior. But now there's probably about 6 or 7. I know Augusta's in, Sykes, it's a much larger group now, which is great, so there's more funding. And a lot of the smaller communities don't have LMI areas, or they'll have something real small, so really they're just joining.
Making it projects
Mhm.
in certain areas.
But
So,
a lot of them join actually just to help the pool, to help the pools, which is great, I think. So.
and Karen, you're actually the voting member. I'm the alternate.
Am I the voting member now? Okay, sorry.
But that's okay. We usually both go anyway.
Yeah.
But I know at the last meeting I attended, we really talked about doing more for equity and putting money in areas that need to have more of a balance. And so it really wasn't a good conversation at the table, but I think they're moving towards that, right, Karen?
Yes, we're actually working. They designed, I think talked about a little bit last time about HUD has a new rule,
Affirmative.
it's called
Affirmative.
affirmatively furthering fair housing, AFFH. And the thing is that you have to come up with goals and projects, both anybody that's getting HUD funding, and we're actually doing it together with Ann Arbor Housing Commission. We're going to submit one plan together, like MSHA has to do it, any of the housing commissions have to do it, on what you're going to do to try to help the imbalance of the inequity that's in housing in your county. For us, it's a county. MSHA would be for the whole state.
So the only money we get really is CDBG.
CDBG.
And those are for the infrastructure projects and playgrounds and ceiling tiles and stuff. And we vote on that every, year for that here.
Yeah, that explains it, so thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it was beneficial to the township.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it is. The resolution to reaffirm commitment to the housing affordability and economic equity analysis for Washtenaw County. Clerk Rowe,
We actually took that off.
so okay. The reason we did is because they can't come and do a presentation. So we want a presentation from the county with all their numbers, and they have maps. And for some reason, they couldn't attend. Someone's getting married, actually. So there'll be, I think it's the August meeting.
Yes, I think so. I'll double check that.
The next item is authorize the State of Michigan Department of State, Charter Township, Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County Help America Vote grant application and agreement, including Schedule B licensing agreement for voting system hardware firmware and software regarding a master contract with Hart InterCivic Incorporated. Basically, this is a new election equipment. Curriculum.
This has just been a really long process, I think probably about 4 years. The state designed bids or specifications for the equipment. Everybody submitted those, and then they decided that they had missed something, so then they went back out and redesigned specifications again, and then they went out. The state actually selected with input. There was a lot of presentations done where clerks from across the state got to come and look at the equipment and make, and decide or make recommendations. We didn't have anything to do with the final selection, but we did have input. And so the state selected 3 different vendors, companies to provide equipment throughout the state, and then each county has to select one, so all of Washtenaw County would be one type of equipment. And there was a lot of meetings and input from clerks across the county, but that final decision was actually made by Larry Kesterbaum with input, and they chose Hart, which is one. I know Oakland County chose it. We chose, Washtenaw County. It's a small. Not as many counties have chosen it, but anyways, it is what we have. And so the state is actually funding for every precinct the tabulator, the accessible, ADA kind of device, the ballot boxes for those, and paying for the maintenance for years 1 through 5. Then after that, anything extra we have to pay for ourselves, and that's what you'll see in another agenda item. But this is the grant that we have to, in order to get our dollars, has to be applied for and signed. It's an agreement. It has to be instituted. And then they think that we're going to actually have the orders in maybe in August. The first counties that are having it, there's some counties are actually using it in August. They have elections. I think Oakland County is one of them. And then we're going to be required, all of Washtenaw County, everybody will have to be on the new equipment for our election this year in November.
Is it touchscreen or?
No, it's not touchscreen. It's the tablet. It's kind of the same system. And they're also going to have an open house so the public, and I'll make sure that everybody knows about that. The public wants to go see it ahead of, gets to see it before our election in November. They can touch it and see it and probably even have some mock voting going on. The ballots are the same. You mark them. But the difference is the tab, it's all digital now versus we're analog. And so actually every ballot that goes through the equipment, a picture is taken of that. So in terms of one of the biggest things that kind of messes you up at the end of the night is that our tabulators are getting old, and sometimes the ballots would go through, but it didn't record them, so your number of ballots that you thought was on the machine was not the actual number went through, or one of my cheer people is smiling and shaking her head over there, or sometimes maybe it would count maybe more than once. That was the biggest thing. They are telling us that is absolutely, and the new technology is impossible to have happen because you're taking a picture. The downside is the tabulator is just a slight bit slower, which other than for the presidential elections, it probably won't be an issue. I'm not sure how many times they've had people lined up at the tabulator. They're usually lined up to vote. People are waiting to get a booth. But because they're a little bit slower, the state's only paying for 3 tabulators, and they did all that based on your number of precincts you had. They're paying for 3 tabulators for the AV count board, but when I calculated out our numbers and the math, I said in order for us, because on the big elections every 4 years, our absentee voters are they're here the entire day. On the other elections, they don't come in till 10 o'clock. And I said, well, they're going to be here way later if it takes longer to get them through. So we're ordering 2 extra tabulators for the big elections and then 3 backups. So we're actually asking what's on your agenda is asking the township to pay for 5 additional tabulators that the state's not paying for. 2 for the AV count board and 3 as our backups. Because even though they tell us they're going to be perfect, nothing's perfect in the election world. And the county is getting a few, but we never, ever have depended on the county for the backup. For one thing, they're in Ann Arbor, and you don't want your voters to have to wait. We've always had tabulators here. There's never been an election that I can recall that we haven't had to take at least 1, if not more, tabulators out to replace the ones that weren't working. So anyways, we're prepared. Hopefully we won't have to use them, but we know the equipment is supposed to be here for 20 years or more, 20 to 30 years. So even the best of equipment wears out. So if nothing else, we'll have additional tabulators down the road. And we also have to pay for the maintenance for years 6 through 10. So that's in one of the motions too, or on agenda items. And if we pay for that in complete full by before you're in year 6 through 10, you actually get a 10% discount. So that's what I'm recommending. It'll save about close to $9,000. But we actually won't have to pay that. We'll just have to remember that for the budget. And I think we talked to Joe about a way to like put it aside or something that we can pay for all that, which is close to $70-some thousand at the end of year. We have to pay it before the year 5, right? At least for the, so it'll be 5. I think 21. So they think it's going to. It all has to do when the equipment's getting delivered. So if we get the equipment at the end of July, then that maintenance agreement will have to be paid in July of 2021. It's the additional 5 years of maintenance. Any questions?
Madam Chair. Heather, I was just curious, is this going to change the training, or all the people going to have to redo the training?
Yeah, so one of the things we had to pay, because Hart is going, that's the company, is going to come out and do a major training for all the county staff, all the clerks in the county, and their deputies. They don't really want election workers, as my understanding, inspectors at that training. And we had to pitch in. They divided that by per capita, too. And our part of that, which is in one of the items, is $2,500. That's not any paying for any staff, because the staff that's going to go is already on salary. You know, we're already getting paid. But then I incorporated. I would like to get 4. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that. 4 people from every single precinct, the chair, the co-chair, and 2 others, to attend and an additional training that they would have put on by Hart for the election inspectors. So that's in the budget, in the amendment, and in the budget.
Monica?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thanks. Is there, I guess you could say, almost, I don't know how to say this, but is there any, I guess you could say, cyber security that's needed for these tabulators? And is the state providing that just in case? I'm not really sure if they are connected to any form of the internet. Just kind of
They're not.
Okay.
The only thing that's going to be connected is at the end of the night. These will be, right now, we have to bring everything out to the township, and then it has to, supposedly, with the Wi-Fi, if the locations, and it's actually had staff go out with 2 separate phones, Verizon and whatever other phone that Angie had, Sprint, I think, and to see if wireless was actually available in those locations. And most places it was, and then I guess if it's not, then that's the only time that we're ever on the internet is the end of the night.
Okay.
Sending the results over. There's nothing, not the tab, not where we look up. You know, a lot of people are concerned about that when they come in. I don't want to give you your license, because it's nothing on the computers where we're looking up and swiping the license to pull up to all the registered voters. None of that is connected to the internet, and nothing in none of the equipment is connected to the internet. It's all standalone software within the actual device itself.
Okay, got you. And one more question, sorry. And it does, at the end of the night when the tabulation is done, it's not uploaded by Wi-Fi or anything of that nature? It's still being done the way that it was done previously?
It's done. There's a physical, you know, you're going to have a physical printout and stuff too. But what they're wanting is us to actually send through Wi-Fi the results just to
Okay.
get them out faster. And we'll still have to get all the hard stuff, you know, the hard copies of things will have to be sent to the county, which the Board of Canvassers will use, and not the Wi-Fi results that were sent over.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of the same way it is now. The only difference is the goal is to have Wi-Fi and that you can send that over sooner at the actual precincts instead of us sending it over when it comes back here.
Are there other questions? I was reading, and we have no choice. We have to do this. So I understand that, and I think it's probably time to upgrade the equipment anyways, and hopefully it's an upgrade. I don't understand why the county won't train our workers. Because every election, don't
No,
they?
they are going to train the workers. I didn't say that right, but they're just not going to be in the initial training. The $2,500 that we're paying is for, and then they're going to do the training for all the inspectors. $2,500 is for all the clerks to be trained and staff to be trained.
But the $4,000 is for our workers.
And that's for our workers to be paid. That's their hourly rate. That's what we pay our workers to go to training, which we pay them now. This is just going to be additional.
So the county's not going to do a training for our workers?
They are going to do the training, but they don't pay our workers to go. We always had to pay our workers to go. That's what that money that's in there is for our workers to go their hourly rates, the $12 an hour, $13 an hour that they get paid to go to training. That's what we pay them now.
And there's 40, so you have,
It's actually 80.
40 of each.
Yeah.
There's
My
40.
goal is to get, because they do the 80 count board too. There's 19 precincts plus it's 20 total with the 80 count board.
20 chairs.
20 chairs and 20 co-chairs, and then 2 more from, I'm trying to get 2 more. I doubt that I'll be able to do that, but that's my goal. Because, there's a lot, like right now, people have been, they've been on, like, a lot of times at a precinct, a person like, I take care of that, I do the ADD, or I do the, there's different people. The chair and co-chair don't always set up every single piece of equipment. So that was kind of the goal, was to get some backups. Plus, a lot of our chairs and co-chairs are getting very old, so it's like nice if we have younger ones that we can, other ones that we can send that, because a lot of the other workers are, and we've been good, Angie's been really good at getting people to, they'll say, well, I don't know, and they'll say, yeah, you can do it, and like talking them into like, moving on to becoming a chair, to trying it out and seeing if they like it, especially in a smaller election, and then, but that's what we got to do, is like keep moving people on.
Eventually, though, like, I used to like train the
Right.
So the goal should be eventually do training ourselves, right? 'Cause
We haven't really had to do it because the county's, they do the training on the overall process. So this training will be specifically just for the equipment, not for like all the rules about, nothing to do with electronic poll book. It'll just be all like how the different new pieces of equipment work, like the ballot boxes collapse, and so we got to be trained on, I think we're probably going to try to train our workers to do that because it's so hard to get staff to, to set up, and that would just be a whole bunch more work for the staff that goes up and sets up. And they're supposed to be relatively easy to set up the ballot boxes, but they're collapsible now. So we got to, because that's another piece, which now our staff doesn't have to do that. Our workers don't have to do that. So it'll be training them how to set up those ballot boxes, training them on the tabulators and how they work. The whole
they're going to be done here.
I don't know where they're going to do it. Have you heard? No. That'd be a question to ask at the
If
clerk's
we're
meeting.
paying extra, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole separate.
They've been really good. It's probably going to be at the LRC because that's such a nice facility now, and it's so large, and they can get 2 or 3 of those rooms. That's where we had the presentations have all been done over at Hogback at LRC. So I don't know, but I guess that's where he'd do it.
And I was reading the agreement, like, it's kind of a big deal.
It's a huge
Have
deal.
you reviewed it from a legal standpoint?
Yes, I sent a letter to
Send an email.
Clerk Rowe and the board on June 4th that I think I did suggest, because of the detailed requirements in this agreement, that Karen, when she gets a chance to get all this in place,
The main,
have a very, sorry?
yeah, for the
Have a very detailed checklist,
dude.
because there are some requirements that are going to go for 10 years, and
Right.
Everything from retention to safeguards to prevent loss, damage, theft.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question about the cybersecurity is a good question, because there wasn't anything I could see about that issue. And of course, that's been probably the hot button issue for the last 12, 18 months in regards to the hacking, things like that. Hopefully there'll be some kind of a firewall that can be protected, especially as you're going to upload the results on a Wi-Fi. I don't want to get above my pay grade on the technology side, but I'm just saying that there are a number of checklists that probably should be prepared in accordance with this contract for a 10-year accounting, and maybe some additional upgrades as time allows for the technology. Because again, I think the voter security, voter fraud, all those issues are going to be really, really high issues in even the next election. So it's good to get ahead of it, and I think you have a good start here, but at the same time, there's a control mechanism you do have to institute to have those safeguards in place.
And we fully recognize that, and actually talked about how we're going to put that. changed because we used to store some equipment in some other places, but because this equipment's so expensive and new, so we're really working hard to get the election room in the back of the first floor totally cleaned out. I put in a work order, have a lot of stuff taken out of there, so that my goal is to keep, like there's, for the ADA folks, there's like printers, copiers that have to be kept. They're all like in their own little cases, and there's the ballot boxes, and then there's actually tabulators, and to be able to keep every single piece of equipment in our election room instead of having them in a variety of different places, with the idea of, just more secure, they'll all be in there. And in terms of the cybersecurity, I can't say this enough. The mechanics of it are going to still be the same. You're still going to have the memory cards, which is the hard drive, cards. That's still going to be where all your voter data, all your votes are tabulated. That's still going to be kept under, secure locks that will require. Inspectors are trained on that, and that comes back here, and then we have to relock those up when they go to the county. You have to record the actual security numbers, I'm not using the right term, on the actual devices, so that when the county opens them up, they check to make sure that same lock is on there. So that same process is still there, and nothing in the voting process itself is on the internet, including the electronic poll books or any of the equipment. It was only that they're going to, instead of us, which we kind of send over now, it's just changing the goal is to change the process so that it's being sent over via Wi-Fi from the actual precincts, just to save time so the public can find out sooner on the election results. But the Board of Canvassers will not use those election results. They will still use what's on the actual drives and as actually reported on the hard copies. So,
When do you expect delivery?
they're saying probably July or August. It will be, we don't know that for sure. Haven't gotten an exact date. But I know these have to be sent by July something.
Mhm.
We weren't having a meet.
Right. No,
Yeah,
this has to be
so
done.
This has to be done tonight because I can't remember what the exact deadline was, but it was before the next meeting. So I put it on here.
Yeah, I've never seen something that has so much detail like that for the plan of storage, and that's
Yeah, well,
interesting.
I've never been. Yeah, you were here when they purchased
Mhm.
the last group? Yeah.
It all went through the county. We didn't
Yeah.
pay anything, and
Yeah.
we didn't do a separate agreement.
Yeah, I tried to get the clerks all wanted to try to get the county board of commissioners to vote for all of our extra stuff, but it didn't fly.
Those additional, I'm sorry, are those additional ones that we're buying, are those serial numbers then given to the county after they're acquired? Because are they received at the same time as the other?
I don't think it's the same, but we'll be keeping them all the same. Whether the funding came from because the funding for the 198 is all coming from 98,000 is coming from the feds and the states. There's two different pots of money, and so on those are the ones that were required. But we're gonna keep that same. We're just gonna use one sheet regardless of whether the money came from township funds from the residents of the township or whether they came from the state or the federal funds. We'll keep it all together as one, inventory and all those things that they're requiring us to do on the equipment they're paying for. We will do that on all of it. I won't do that separate.
I guess I was trying to ask if, because they're requiring all these inventory records and all these type of safeguards, if those 5 get lumped into the original purchase, so you only have to do it one time as opposed to having to do 2 separate accounting. Because I don't really know, because the 198, I don't know, the 5 is going to be the ones that we're acquiring with our dollars, I think.
Yeah, we'll have a separate agreement with Hart for our equipment, including the supplies, the batteries, and the chargers and all that. That's a separate agreement, or not agreement, but purchase order that we'll have with Hart for that. And we will keep track of the inventory, the serial numbers that are for the ones paid for by the feds and states and ours. But I'll just have it all in one form so that when we're checking, we're just going through,
As if, in fact, you had to substitute one, the federal, with the one that you purchased, somehow you want to make sure that the serial numbers and everything are all going to be.
Well, yeah, and I think there's like some warranty stuff around, around all of them too. So, depends on when something went wrong, or if you actually had to replace one totally, whether that would.
Well, it's, yeah, and if the grantee fails to maintain extended service and coverage,
Have to do the maintenance agreement.
then you have to pay back all the grant
Right.
funds. I mean, they're,
Like you don't have a choice of
right.
doing years through 6 through 10 on the maintenance agreement. The question is just, do you want to pay it by year,
Right.
which means it costs more, right? So you
Yeah.
have to do it. You don't have a choice.
Right. Then there's just a lot of requirements.
Yeah, that's why I thought the checklist is going to be important, and Karen's already working on that, I think, to get that checklist, because 10 years is a long time to hand off those kinds of reports and everything.
Well, are they going to use it for November election? So they,
Got to get it here and get trained. Luckily, it's a small election.
what, in,
November. I mean, it's county-wide, so every precinct has to be open. We can't combine, so that's good. So everybody will get their chance to practice. But in terms of small, I meant in terms of turnout is traditionally small, so people won't be going crazy with new equipment and people waiting in line, and so. And my goal is, we do the election inspectors, but we have there's several township employees that actually help out now, so hopefully they'll be able to go and get trained too, because a lot of times people who work with computers every day are much more efficient in terms of the elections. And plus there'll be some kind of, most of the people who go are younger than me, so it'll be more longevity. They're going to be here, so they get trained on the first stuff, and they're going to be here, I'm not going to be here for 20 years. I can guarantee that. So they could be trained more too. So hopefully the department heads have been really great in letting us use some of the other township employees from other departments that can, have more than one staff person in the department can afford to let somebody go. So.
I just wanted to ask a quick question on the grant. Is it going to be a pass-through grant, or is that something we have to worry about?
It's all through the county.
Okay, so it's a pass.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's all through
thank
the
you.
county.
that was Giovanna Neal,
Yes.
for the record?
Good question. Yeah.
Good question, yeah. So you just have to get everything, your checklist, you have to have it in order, they said,
Mm-hmm.
and where we're going to maintain them. Did they have any requirements on degrees or controlled environments? You know how sometimes they
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's good, because we don't have it.
Yeah. I am somewhat concerned because we did have a leak the other day, but it ended up being something freaky. Jeff's going to get that hole fixed, right, Jeff? Thank you. So
Okay.
I actually was thinking, and I know this is probably being way too anal, but then maybe it's not. I was thinking about, what if we could get some water, because that's my biggest concern is water. Because the building's pretty much made out of cement, the chances of it catch on fire, and I was thinking about, because there are water pipes in it, well, they're everywhere. I actually was thinking, is there some watertight containers I could purchase, but I haven't done research on that.
Why don't we have insurance, right?
No, I know.
These will be
I
insured.
know, and that's what I
Okay.
told myself. That's
Okay.
what my husband always says, Karen, we do got insurance. It's like,
Right, yeah, okay, so that will.
you're right. Yeah, we definitely, we will have to add this to the policy.
So the next item we've kind of discussed already,
Mm-hmm.
which is a requirement.
Additional equipment, yeah.
Very long motion. Number 7 is a resolution to purchase tax foreclosed properties located at 1636 Bailey, 1212 East Clark, and 679 Calder in the amount of $43,721 in line item 101-950-969-011 from the Washoe County Treasurer list of foreclosed properties under the right of first refusal. Any questions on that?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
and these are with, I think I see it in there, these are with the intention to sell to Habitat, correct?
Correct.
To continue the stabilization of the neighborhoods. I know a lot of the neighborhood watch meetings that I've attended, there was questions about how long does Habitat have to renovate a home once they have it in their possession. How long do they have to renovate a home? Is there a time limit, or is it just whenever they? And some residents just said that.
They do them as fast as they can because, they only have so much staff, so we don't have any requirement. If there are complaints and stuff, I think we handle them well.
Mm-hmm.
There's something specific, like I know they don't want to look at a tore up fence, so I know one time we got them to put up a fence before they really were working on the house or something else was wrong.
One of the emails I thought was at least they want to start on it after 1 year, but we have we have a lot to do, and they've sat vacant for probably 2 years or longer before they get them. So they make sure they go in and secure them. They make sure they're maintained and mowed during the time while they're waiting to renovate them. But one email said that they always try to renovate it within a year, but they have, this is 3 properties. They're doing them pretty
Well,
well.
last year we bought how many, Doug? Was it 6? How many was it?
14 or 15.
And they wanted us to hold off, and they just closed recently on the last 4, was it, that we were holding, something like that. Because I think now they're ready to move on to those. And I know they have less house. It's harder for them to get houses now, which is a good thing. And they're really interested. They met with Brenda and I and Larry, and they really are looking for they're planning the future. They're looking for vacant land now because they know that they're going to eventually they're running. And this is all there was. They bought every house that was on the tax foreclosure list in Ypsi Township. So last year it was a lot. This is it. And I know we're not doing as many foreclosures. The good news is economy's picking up. The bad news is not going to be as many houses to renovate, but that's the good news.
Right.
So I can ask them, but I know because people do ask
Mhm,
that.
yeah. There was a couple people, they said it seemed like a few of the properties were just taking longer than a year, 18 months, or, it just seemed like it was taking forever. And they wanted to see the property finished, and new residents in there. So that's
Yeah,
why-
they're glad when Habitat buys them, but they want them to renovate them quicker and get
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will find out. I can ask that question though, Jimmy. Are there any other questions on this? The next item is Resolution 2017-15, abandoned tax delinquent property. Clerk Rowe?
This is the resolution that we realized that we didn't do last year. I think Doug brought it, Attorney W. Winters brought it to our attention. And this is the one that allows the county treasurer, to move the tax foreclosed properties faster through the system. So we put a tickler out on our calendars to remember that we need to do this every single year. By law, we have to do it every year.
So it accelerates
Accelerates. Thank you.
the forfeiture.
Mhm.
By 1 year, I think.
Doug?
Yes, by 1 year.
Is it 1 year? Yeah.
So we send this to the county.
Mm-hmm. To Catherine. And probably to Larry too, Kester Law.
Are there any questions on that?
So does that cut it down to 2 years? Is it, I think it's normally 3 years for the full tax foreclosure process, or, so this cuts it?
It's 3 years, normally.
And this cuts it to 2.
2, okay.
Madam Chair, that is only for abandoned property only, though. So if the property is tax delinquent and they have moved out of the house, that's where this resolution would apply. If they're in the house and it's tax delinquent, do they still get the 3-year process? Okay. As long as
This says abandoned,
Yeah, okay,
so it's usually banks,
okay.
right, Doug?
Yeah, in fact, right now, even though Clerk Rowe was saying that we're down on foreclosures for right of first refusal, we still got a lot of vacant properties
Oh,
out
yeah.
there. You've seen those.
Yeah.
And Habitat's trying to acquire as many of those as they can because in the acceleration from going from 3 years down to 2 years, we have so many of these properties that are sitting out there that are at times attractive nuisances and create such a horrible presence in the community, that if we can get these houses into someone's hands a little bit sooner, I think it's going to help everybody involved in terms of the stabilization. But yeah, it's going to be ones that are truly abandoned that we're going to accelerate, not anybody living in the house.
The next item is request of Mike Radzik to authorize legal action, if necessary, to abate public nuisance for property located at 1659 Wismer, 100 North Clubview, 881 Dons Drive, 553 Kansas, 1137 Nash, and 1814 Caroline. Mr. Radzik?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We went a considerable number of months late last year and early this year without bringing any of these types of cases, and now it seems like it might seem like there's more, but they tend to average out over time, and we are very cognizant of the budget that's available for these. The first one is 1659 Wismer. This is a certified rental property in the Sugarbrook neighborhood that we've been receiving a lot of complaints from a lot of neighbors for a very long time. The accusations were that it was being operated as a rooming house with transient tenants in and out for a total of 4 individual rooms that were being rented. The Sheriff's Department was able to confirm that information during a parole compliance check with the Michigan Department of Corrections. We being OCF staff, our ordinance staff, made contact a few months ago with the landlord about this issue, and he provided us with what appeared to be a newly executed lease with 4 individuals, and he purported it that he was renting it out to a domestic family unit in compliance with our zoning laws. We felt as though that was not the case, and we subsequently received new information from one of the tenants who had filed a property maintenance complaint, who provided us with a copy of her lease, which was in fact to lease one of the rooms in the house. So we were not able to resolve this successfully with the property owner, and I did ask for and receive administrative approval to have the attorney's office initiate the lawsuit, so that it has been initiated and it is in the legal process right now. Second one is 100 North Clubview. This is in the neighborhood west of Hewitt between Ellsworth and Packard. It's owner occupied, and our OCF staff made contact with the property owner by the name of Brenda Sims back in February. Police EMS were called, and our ordinance department was then summoned on a welfare check. Some relatives asked them to go check because they hadn't had any contact with the individual for a period of time. It's hard to describe, but all of the responding first responders had to climb over all of the contents inside the home. At one point, our ordinance officer was kneeling on top of the clutter with his head against the ceiling taking photographs. It was that high and that much of a fire load problem. And she was rescued by the EMS personnel and taken to a hospital. Since then, Bill Elling, our ordinance administrator, has worked tirelessly with family members and the owner in an effort to get the house cleaned out without the necessity for legal action. Community volunteers, neighbors, some nonprofit organizations all pitched in and made several attempts, but unfortunately the property owner wasn't allowing them to follow through. And it remains in that same condition, and we have truly exhausted all other avenues to resolve this. 881 Dons Drive is a single-family vacant house. It's in a B3 commercial zoned piece of property just off Michigan Avenue. Our staff condemned it last month using an administrative warrant to do an inspection. It was reported to us by neighbors. There's a large hole in the roof. The breezeway between the house and the garage has collapsed structurally. There's other structural violations, and outside the grass and the general upkeep of the outside has been neglected for a long time. It's owned by the estate of the deceased previous owner, Raymond Kalusha, and we attempted to do something with it with a surviving son who had lived there up until recently, and all those efforts failed, and so we're asking for your approval to go to court on this. 553 Kansas is also a single-family house that's been vacant, we think, for about 3 years. It was reported to us by neighbors who say they watched the wild animals come and go through a large hole in the roof, and our staff was able to verify that. It's owned by Thomas and Linda DeWitt. We verified that Mr. DeWitt passed away in 2008, and we've been unable to locate the surviving spouse. We did inspect it last month under an administrative warrant, and it was condemned. And this is an otherwise very well-kept and attractive street. It's the section of Kansas between Ecorse and Tyler Road, south of Ecorse Road. And it is an attractive public nuisance on that street to the detriment of the other property owners. 1137 Nash, also a single-family home that was foreclosed upon by U.S. National Bank back in September, and it remained occupied until March of this year. On March 14th, we assisted the Sheriff's Department. They were investigating a breaking and entering and learned that the previous owner was deceased and the house had at that point become vacant. We had to summon a contractor to secure some open doors and windows. We followed up with the bank. They have failed to register it under the vacant property ordinance. We did an administrative warrant inspection in May. The C of O was revoked due to some hoarding, fire load, and sanitation issues. And we've exhausted all other avenues at this point. And finally, 1814 Carol Ann Avenue in the West Willow neighborhood. It's a single-family home. It's owner-occupied by Wallace and Phyllis Miller. It came under code enforcement about 18 months ago in January of 2016. It was actually brought to our attention when one of our inspectors was doing a rental inspection at a house across the street. Neighbors were pointing out some missing and broken windows that weren't visible from the street, and we were able to see those. So our staff, it was Ordinance Officer Tom Greenwood, made contact with the family. We have exhausted all efforts to remedy this short of legal action. We actually connected them with Habitat for Humanity to try to get a proper working furnace installed. It appeared as though the old one, which was in terrible condition, that it actually appeared as though they had been using the furnace flame to cook meals. Habitat sent a contractor in to try to remedy that. The contractor, after going there a couple of times, told Habitat that they were refusing to go back because of the condition and lack of cooperation. Habitat made some other efforts as well, and it just didn't work out. So not only for the neighbors, but for the welfare of the family living there, we need legal intervention in order to try to resolve this. And that is all of the cases for this agenda item.
Other questions?
Just one question. This is just in regards to Clubview. Just curious, was that a hoarding situation? Because of the pictures, it looked like it. And then the second question I would have is that obviously I know the township has done all the efforts that they can do, at least at this time. But is there any additional resources with the county that you know of that helps people who are hoarders and have issues with hoarding?
There is a hoarders task force, if you will, that our staff works with frequently. Unfortunately, in this particular situation, I'm not qualified to make a diagnosis, but I think it's based on what we've seen, it's quite obvious there's some serious mental health issues going on here. And in this situation, it's the property owner who lives there refusing any and all help from family members, volunteers, and outside organizations like the ones that we've discussed that could potentially help her. At one point, there was a roll-off dumpster delivered to the driveway, and she just would not allow anything to be removed.
Madam Chair. I'm just going to use this as an appropriate place to put in a pitch for supporting community mental health funding, which has been constantly under attack, especially at the county level. So just anyone who's interested in advocating for that, make sure you call your representatives who are in control of those funds, because as a registered nurse, I'm also not allowed to diagnose anything, but I guarantee there's not one situation here where there's not some mental health needs in place. So that's all.
Other questions?
I would just say, maybe to what Mike is saying, and when you look at these photographs that come from the OCS to us, then to you, I think everybody here has a tremendous amount of compassion, and this may be a segue to what I will get into during the attorney report. And I just think right now that we're still at that point where we really have to be sensitive to the issues that each of these cases may present, but also many of them have come to us from our neighbors in the area, from neighboring residents, who also are trying to ensure that there's not only assistance, but also that there's not going to be ongoing impacts upon their quality of life issues too. And it's a balancing act many times, but I think in all these cases Mike has brought forward tonight, these are some of the more difficult ones we've seen in a while. We know that they've been there. We even involved the churches as much as possible on some of these issues to try and get help for some of the individuals. When you have wild animals, like the one in Kansas, coming and going into the properties, and you also have the one property, I think it's on Nash, where there's a lot of graffiti inside the property, which pretty much is indicative in many ways that people have been coming and going in that house since it became abandoned. There's just a constant number of pressures being put on the OCS to identify those that are really going to be the ones that we've run our course on a lot of these properties. And there's a lot more out there. I go through them all, and as well as Mike and Bill Elling and everything. We're trying to use some kind of discretion as well as reasoned temperament, and like I said before, compassion before they come forward here, because these are in many ways, you've seen the photographs, these can be very, very gut-wrenching to go through these. And our heart goes out to all the people that have fallen upon hard times. At the same time, when you have a lot of these houses and neighborhoods where you have maybe 60-foot lots and sometimes maybe even smaller, you can imagine, again, the impact it has upon the adjacent property owners and other people who are using their properties the way we want everybody to use their properties in a wholesome manner. And so I'm just indicating that to you because it could be a segue into some of the things I do think the Township Board may be able to do in the months ahead. But I do think right now that I know Mike and myself and Bill, these are hard ones. These are definitely. They're not easy to go through and look at these situations here. So I know a great deal of thought and discernment is being brought to the board in regards to what's before you. But we're very, very sensitive, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we don't have to bring these forward in this number. But right now we've kind of exhausted all of our options, and that's why I think right now we're trying to. Like it's indicating to you right now, we have no real game plan right now, but to do what has to be recommended, I believe, or considered by the board. That's all.
You may also notice, most recently, I've just been including photographs, one photograph for each property at the outside of the house, and for this agenda, I didn't have time, so there's none. But in years past, we would often include photographs that detailed what our staff saw inside the house, and it was an intentional decision that I made at some point to stop doing that, despite the fact that our records are public and they're subject to freedom of information disclosure when appropriate. Because of the mental health implications, I just felt that it it was not always appropriate to do that, so we stopped doing that. And that's why there's been a change in what you see. But those files are available if you would like to see them. And in many cases, you do see the notice of violations accompanying some of the communication that's under attorney-client privilege. So just wanted to point that out as well in terms of that sensitivity.
I know the one on Wismer Street has been an issue at Neighborhood Watch, Ms. Kaiser, for
Yes,
2 years,
most certainly.
at least 2 years. And that's a rental, and that's someone who's taken advantage of people, in my opinion, that have mental health issues, and renting out a little space to them and having 5, 6 people in a house and using the back porch as a rental. I mean, there's been several calls for services, arrests made out of there. It's just awful. Right. I mean,
Yes.
I look forward to that court hearing. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we're going to go to the request of Mike Radzik to seek legal action to abate public nuisance drug houses by padlocking. They are 2357 Ravenwood, 1645 Dorothy, and 555 East Grand.
Because the nature of these types of public nuisance requests are different from the ones we just discussed, we decided to submit 2 separate agenda items. These are all drug padlock cases under the State Nuisance Act. The first one in West Willow at 2357 Ravenwood. Back in April, the Sheriff's Office executed a criminal search warrant at that address. It was part of a larger narcotics trafficking investigation that included a variety of the target living at the address is accused of delivering a variety of different types of drugs, illegal drugs, to many people, both at this house and at other places around the area, but in particular heroin. Without going into much detail, this is part of a larger federal investigation regarding delivery of heroin with really bad consequences. The property owner, landlord, is Mr. Daniel Novak of Tipton, Michigan. This house had previously been investigated under similar circumstances by the Sheriff's Office in 2014. So he had already been placed on notice at this house, not for the same tenant, but for the same type of activity by another tenant at the house. We did seek administrative approval to initiate litigation under the state law, and that has been initiated, and it is scheduled for a show cause hearing very soon. The next one is 1645 Dorothy in the Sugarbrook neighborhood. This was also a search warrant by the Sheriff's Office in April, and they subsequently, after the search warrant, did more investigative work, and this is an owner-occupied home. The owner ultimately, his name is James LaFleur, he ultimately pled guilty to a state law case of maintaining a drug house. But his testimony during his plea in court, in district court, in addition to his interviews with Deputy Bufo at the Sheriff's Department, several interviews over a period of time, they were able to verify the allegations that had come primarily from a host of neighbors that not only was drug trafficking occurring at the property, but there was prostitution as well. They were able to verify that a woman who was known to police as a prostitute with convictions for same and also a drug addiction had been allowed to stay there for a very long period of time and was having her prostitute customers come to the home, which was the observations of neighbors, which turned out to be true, as they do in 99.9% of the situations that we encounter. So both for drug trafficking and prostitution, which also qualifies as a crime under which we can ask the court to padlock the home, I asked for administrative approval, and this case has also been filed with the circuit court. And just as a side note, when the sheriff's department conducted their raid at this house, by the time they were done, there were dozens of neighbors out applauding and thanking them for their efforts to try to do something because of the severe impact on their quality of life on Dorothy Street. The final one is 555 East Grand Boulevard. This is the section of Grand Boulevard between Michigan Avenue and Forest. A little less than a month ago, the Sheriff's Office CAT team conducted a narcotics investigation, and after they hit the door, they ended up having to call the Michigan State Police LawNet and Rhino narcotics teams. Those are acronyms. LawNet serves the Washtenaw County area and Ypsilanti Township, but the Rhino team was called because of their expertise in safely dismantling clandestine meth laboratories. Police walked into an active meth lab in progress with meth being cooked at, I think, 5 in the morning when they hit the door. And as you know, or may know, clandestine manufacturing of methamphetamine is a highly volatile, dangerous chemical environment that can cause physical harm and is prone to explosion and has exploded in many situations, killing people. In this case, just like the one we had on Woodland Court a couple of years ago, there were 2 small children who were transported to the hospital for evaluation due to the exposure to those chemicals in that environment. This is also an owner-occupied property, and we requested, or I am requesting, we did not do administrative request on this. This is an original request for your approval to engage in circuit court to shut this operation down. They were not only making the meth there, but they were selling it, at least that's the allegations, to people in the community. If you have
Are
any
there any
questions, I'll be
questions?
happy to answer them.
Questions or we're very appreciative to all the residents who call these in. Because we would not know if they didn't.
Absolutely.
The next item is a request to lease a, called a Neo Post mail machine. We currently have one. And a new model has come out. They had demonstrations, and the amount we're paying is $494.13 per month. This machine is $352.90, and it's supposed to be a much better. Oh, the one for the chief, I'm sorry. Oh, where did I go to? Let me see here. Chief Copeland, I'll do chief first. Yeah, you're right. Chief, for approval of contract with OHM to provide professional engineering services, which he did find the actual
Site
plans.
Yes.
So that's good.
But he didn't have the kind, he still doesn't have what he needs.
No, good evening, Madam Supervisor and Board. The plans I had the floor schedules, wall schedules, but it did not have the specifications for the concrete. And I don't know if that's something that you can find for us, Karen. OHM did come over. Well, tonight I'm here to seek approval or authorization to have OHM provide professional services for this project of replacing and or repairing the parking lot at fire headquarters on Ford Boulevard. OHM was on site today doing part of their site visit and some of the measurements, and we kind of went around to see what the scope of the entire scope of the project is. And having, you would say, professional help is such a great tool in this, because this is complicated in order to do this. Part of their proposal, there were 4 parts to their proposal. The site inspection was the first part, and that was an option to do the core samples, which in my opinion is very important to do because of, you might say, the density or the depth of the concrete in some of the places. It may vary. I just don't know what we're dealing with. So their proposal is to do those core samples to give us an indication of the depth and you might say the scope of not only the concrete but also the underlayment there also. And that's the second part, I think, is for them to give you a preliminary drawing. And there might be some changes, I think, to the parking lot. For example, we've got an area just north of where our fuel tanks are, and there's rarely anyone that uses that area. And the proposal came to say maybe making that green space. And my staff today, as I kind of milled over that with them, they were like, well, that gives us an excellent place to push the snow when we do the snow removal. So that the third part of their proposal is to come up with the specs. Right. And the core samples will play an important part in that. And the fourth part is just the bidding process. So I am ecstatic about this project being underway, and I'm just asking the board to help me to move forward with OHM to see this project to a conclusion. Any questions?
Any questions? We definitely need it, right? Yeah. So, and I think it's the original, isn't it? The
Well,
original.
there have been some patchwork done several times, it looks like, and even the patches are failing on it.
Yeah. It needs to be upgraded.
But when looking on the plans, it was, I think, it was 1992 was the date on those plans. So I'm thinking 92, 93, somewhere in there is when it was.
Yeah, that's right.
When it was done. Yeah.
It's deteriorated, so I think it's well needed.
The curbs and the approach out at the road, yeah, it's time.
There's no questions. We'll move on to the next agenda. Thank you, Chief. Next item's request for the lease of NeoPost mail machine with mail finance for $352.90 for 60 months, which is budgeted in line item 101-267-000-730. Did I get them all? I didn't.
I think I had another item.
Oh, you did? Okay.
One more.
I didn't get the new one, no. That's part of the problem, is that I had the new one. Okay. Yeah, I got the old one. I printed it out. We'll just shut this one up here. Okay.
Okay, the second item I'm here for is
Number 11
number 11.
on
It's a request, to relinquish one automatic chest compression device from the 2016 Regional EMS grant to Superior Township in the amount of $1,863.
Back on April 27th, we had a special meeting to approve the MOU for the EMS grant, regional grant, which provides us with 4 automatic defibrillators. Also in that grant, I requested 4 automatic chest compression devices, as well as some other equipment like batteries and a tester unit to go with that. The thinking was that in the future here, medical control would change their view on the automatic compression devices and make that a standard for use in the county, which I think it's going to happen. So I requested 4 of them and asked to equip all of our frontline trucks with a chest compressor and an AED. Superior Township is party to this grant also. However, they didn't at the time of submittal request that. Since then, I think because these devices are very expensive, I think about $18,000 each, and we're in line for 4 of them. I was approached by their chief to see if we could relinquish one of them for use in Superior Township. And I just thought that would be a neighborly type of thing to do in light of the fact that they're sharing that aerial grant with us, that aerial truck grant that'll be in soon, that'll be realized here, I think, probably in another 6 or 8 months when the truck comes. So, and I may have some other ancillary plans for that when that comes, because it's supposed to be housed up in Superior. But yesterday, when we had them come to help us with a flag, I don't want to get too far off of this issue here, but they only had one guy on that truck, which I thought, We might have to revisit that in the future when the new aerial comes. But never mind, we thought it would be a neighborly gesture to our neighbors to the north who we respond in the automatic mutual aid pack to accommodate their request to relinquish one of these devices, just a compression device.
It's an extra one for us. It's an extra one for us.
Yeah, one of four. We have
Right.
4, so just one of 4. And they would pay the matching 10%.
So it's
Yeah.
cheaper. I know when the City of Ypsilanti fire truck was in an accident,
Yes.
you had mentioned to me that you had loaned them one of our truck. Are they still?
Yes, they're still utilizing that truck. And that potentially is going to be a long-term, I'm thinking, situation because they have a truck on order. And I think that truck that was damaged on the highway is going to be totaled. So it'll probably be 8 months to a year before they get a replacement truck, unless they go and lease a truck or something like that.
So will their insurance company pay us to use our extra truck? Is there an agreement or is there?
We had an agreement before that
Right.
pretty much it was for a short term. At least I haven't brought it back to the board. My apologies, but
That's okay.
we did a short term loan. I think it was for 90 days or
Yeah,
less
you
before
did
with
that
the truck.
before,
Yeah. And I think this happened about a month ago. Yeah, so it's been
So-
about a month. So I can come back to you guys and let me go talk to the chief and see what we can come up with. Because we've had trucks out of service, dual trucks out of service time, it was our plan initially when we purchased the new Rosie truck to mothball or send that reserve, I think it's Reserve 2, out to service, take it out of service and put it out to pasture. But because of our maintenance situation, I kept it, for times like these. So maybe something we can explore, maybe selling that to them.
Well, we should rent it. I'm sure their insurance company will pay to rent it from us. And we have to notify our insurance company that we're,
I'll get back to the board on that. I'll approach the chief about,
now that you know it might be longer.
yes.
So glad everyone was okay, but we had a death of one child in that incident. Yeah,
Tragic.
it was. Any questions of the chief? So now we're at the mail machine. Do you want to have any questions? It's replacing the existing machine that we have at actually a lesser amount than we previously had. This is the ideal cost, but they were able to get 3 prices anyways and met with vendors, and Lisa and Debbie in my office worked on that.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I did have one question. Let me find it in the packet. It's in the cost breakdown, but it talks about rate changes, and I didn't know if I was reading that the wrong way.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 154. It's at the very bottom. It says quantity 6, unit month. 60-month lease includes meter rental, standard maintenance, and rate changes for the life of the lease. Does that mean that the monthly rate could change during our
I think it's postal rates, isn't it?
It's a postal.
postal rates?
When the
Okay,
United States- when
thank
they
you.
trade.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Good question. The next agenda item is request of Jeff Allen, Residential Service Director, to waive the financial policy and will award the low quote to Spartan Distributors for the purchase of a Toro Grand's Master Mower in the amount of $60,815.36. Jeff?
Good evening.
Good evening.
We are looking to purchase the same mower that we purchased the identical mower that we purchased in March. If you remember, we purchased a mower, and then the next week the golf course came to purchase a new mower, and the end result was that we took 2 of our older mowers to get an estimate on, and we repaired one for $16,000, and then we gave that, which was our mower, to the golf course for their new mower, which leaves us now a mower short, and that's why I'm back at the board asking for that mower.
Questions on this? The next item is if I can pay attention here. Request of Brian McCleary for this approval letter agreement to sell 110 Johnson Street for $2,500 plus a closing cost. Mr. Winters, have you had the opportunity to review everything?
Yeah, in fact, Brian's getting very, very good at, he's got the templates down, and so we're following, really, or he's following what the board's policies have been in regards to selling vacant properties. So, again, I think everything's in proper form. It's a question of execution and payment.
Another question? I think this is the third or fourth one. We have 900 or something. I don't know. We have a lot. So we're trying to, these are vacant lots next to existing homes and offering to sell them to the neighbors as long as they remain a single-family home and owner-occupied. Are there any questions? Sir, are you here for this home? No? In the back, are you here for this? You can't hear me.
No, he said.
Okay. The next item is a request to approve the principles of governance as recommended by the Michigan Township Association. Clerk Roll.
I just put it on the agenda. I thought it was something that was good. I probably, in retrospect, maybe should have done the work session to talk about it, but I think it's kind of like what we try to do, so I think it's always good to put in writing, kind of how you want to operate and act as an elected body. So what other people think about it. They actually, I guess this is kind of off agenda a little bit, but it came from that same thing. The last issue had to do with meetings, so people can read that and have any suggestions and stuff. I think we'd be open. I think it was a really good article on meetings and how to get public participation and and the NTA last issues, and that's where kind of this came from too. So
The only thing I didn't know is the understanding of the obligations and responsibilities of the American citizenship, democratic government and freedom. I didn't know what that meant. That's the only part I really.
yeah, and that was kind of like that. Yeah, it is very broad, but it was kind of like a lot of the focus of that meetings article too was about like how to get more input and having residents play a more active role in township government, and that we're just not here to like do grass and pick up that if there are issues that, so I don't know. I take that as a take on that, but
Oh, okay. I didn't know if they had to do with other issues with citizenship.
that's how I read it. But
Okay.
it's subject to interpretation because it is very broad.
All right. That sounds better anyway.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank
Yes.
you for bringing up that question, because I was going to ask about what did freedom, I mean, I know what freedom means, but what did it mean in this aspect? Because it can mean many different aspects.
Everything else is cool.
Yeah, so thank you. Otherwise than that, thank you, Clerk Rowe, for including this. I actually thought, I read the article also, I thought it was really good thing to include, so.
Some of their articles are, sorry,
That's okay.
some of their articles sometimes are like kind of mundane or just, when I read that one, I just thought, especially with having a lot of new trustees and stuff, I thought, well, it might be a good time just to look at if there are ideas, or especially because you all are bringing new, fresh, or maybe no opinions, I don't know, new ideas, whatever, and then if there is something that we could do, or the public. I mean, one of the things they say in there, which I don't agree with totally, but it's kind of off the record. I mean, this is really not a subject, so I'm sorry. One of the things they do say in there is like, when people aren't here, it's because you're not really doing stuff they're interested in. But I have a different theory. If people come when they really want something or need something or are mad, it's kind of my same theory about union meetings. And if folks that don't come, it's just generally. But I think the idea is like, how do you encourage more public participation, which is really hard today in terms of being able to communicate with people, whatever organization you're in. It's like whatever I go to, it's always like, well, what can we do better? It's always, well, we need to do better. Like, we all have the same issues. How do you get your message out? How do you get input from whoever your constituents are, whether it's Kiwanis or the mental health department or the township board. It's a struggle. We've talked a lot about maybe, the newsletter, or do we hire somebody to do social, more media?
Communicate, yes.
Because it's twofold. One is like, what are we doing here when we need input? And two is, well, do you have any ideas for us? I mean, we already serve. It is your money, So I don't.
Citizen engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is what we're trying to do. But, okay. I did read where Ann Arbor was having online comments during agenda items. Is that?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was in the newspaper.
They have to stay home and then still have their 2 cents.
Yeah, that they can submit comments.
And that's where you get people involved.
Well, I know Gulf Village Neighborhood Watch has that, and I know the West Willow also has podcasting. So there's new things happening,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
What they're doing is that I guess it allows for people to, obviously if they read the agenda before the meeting, if they have a comment, they can actually submit that comment online. I think it's going to, if I have it correct. Yeah, clerk's up, and then that comment will be read, and if it's a question that needs explaining, then from that point the board would explain it. But yeah, I thought it was actually pretty nice. That's just another way to inspire citizens' participation.
A question about that. Is it like, do you have to be present by name? Don't laugh at me, Jimmy. Or can you be like incognito, like Ponyboy 1? Because I just think of the MLive articles and like,
No, I'd say no.
I can't, so I didn't know if it was like you could identify them as a definite resident within your community.
It said no anonymous comment.
Okay.
That's what, but, I mean, how are they going to verify?
No, but I mean, just, saying that
Right.
If it was live, it would be hard. If it was sent to the clerk's office, you could run it through, I don't know, if they're not registered to vote, then I guess they don't have any say. So I don't know. We could run it through voter registry instead of registered.
Strike that comment.
I don't know. Strike that comment.
Yeah, we're going to strike it.
Well, you know what they say about if you don't vote, you don't. Oh, sorry.
The next item is request to withdraw from the interlocal agreement creating the Detroit Regional Aerotropolis Development Corporation dated June 17th, 2009. And it's very specific. It's Article 8, Section 8.02, entitled Duration of and Withdraw from and Termination of the Agreement. So Ypsilanti Township participated with this in 2009. It was a $25,000 contribution per year for this. And one of the reasons the Aerotropolis is, they came to us is because the Detroit Metro Airport and Willow Run in Washtenaw County created a very different Aerotropolis when you have two airports within the circle of development. And we had a meeting recently with the it's with Metro, Detroit Metro Airport, and they are actually proposing to close Hangar 1, which is in Ypsilanti Township, and demolish it, which is where ACM is. They were entertaining ideas if someone wanted to buy it for $1, but they're going to be building a new hangar in Wayne County, so everything's going to be in Wayne County except for the flight pattern. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
So, I mean, it was created because we had two unique opportunities, and they had long-term plans to expand Willow Run for more cargo and to create jobs. And I know that FedEx was looking here at one time in Ypsi Township because of Willow Run, but they have changed their plans on that. So we've asked for measurables in the past, and what have we actually received and benefit from the dollars that we've given. And Washtenaw County, last year I wanted to bring it forward, and Washtenaw County didn't want to do it. So this year we met with Greg Deal of Washtenaw County and the 3 full-time officials. In light of what they're doing, I don't see why we should participate and use those dollars towards our economic development in Ypsilanti Township versus the regional tropical. So I'll answer any questions that we have. I know Attorney Winters has reviewed it, and we have to do it by the end of June. Did you?
That's correct. If you're going to withdraw by end of this year, you need to give the notice in accordance with that procedure. And I, too, attended some of those meetings over the years with Supervisor Stumbo. I was on one. I used to go to the wrong meeting because they have a executive committee and they had a large committee, and I used to get mixed up and go to both of them, I think. But I think over the time, she's been pretty much, very engaged on behalf of the township all during those years. And we tried to be a good partner in that group, but as she pointed out, they've kind of changed direction a little
Yeah.
bit. So at the same time, I think it is an expense, and I think the city of Ypsi had a waiver down to very little for a long time, and I think we've carried it for about as long as we can justify it in many ways. I don't know, it's a board decision, but I think that with the ACM coming along and other things that are happening over here, that those dollars could be used in that direction. Board decision.
I think one of the factors, too, that we found out, well, we kind of suspected it, but then we got confirmation in our meeting, is that Delta is now doing some cargo, too, which before, we were the only cargo operation, and so it made more sense in terms of trying to develop it. Because the whole idea is that Aerotropolis is an international kind of thing, and it's years before we even joined, there was a lot of presentations and hearings on specialists in that field on how to use airports for economic development. And the idea is that we would develop the regions between Metro and us, and then we put the entire township into it. Every community that joined could put down what specific parcels, we put our entire township into and the whole idea is that there'd be expertise and funding and help in terms of economic development in our entire township as part of that. But I don't know, have they done stuff even in Detroit or Wayne County, or is it just, and I know that they got caught up in the whole change in power and the whole kind of corruption. Ms. Ennis was on it from DTE, and it was great then, and then even the person who left was really good, but then they got caught up in the Wayne County corruption stuff, and it seems like things have just went sour. I don't know. That would be my perspective, but you know more because you guys.
Yeah, and I was just elected vice chair of the group, but you have to do what's in the best interest of the community. And with Willow Run shifting everything to Wayne County, that wasn't the deal, Ms. Kaiser?
Isn't this what, I think his name was Bob Ficano, came and sold to us that was supposed to be a big deal of building up the I-94 corridor?
275.
Yeah.
Right.
And which he,
And they have had a lot of successful,
they have.
in Wayne County, they've had a lot of, we had one mechanic shop that relocated and made it larger, but it's just, the whole issue was Willow Run and to make it more viable and create jobs there, and they're moving it to Wayne County. And
Right, the big ideas for the I-94 corridor, which did not occur.
no, it had that. But there's Taylor and several communities. Van Buren's supposed to get something real soon here, too. So it's worked well for Wayne County, not as much for Washtenaw.
We will need, I went through it, and I don't know if you have a list of who's on it, because I know we have to send under the agreement each one of those signing partners, having the mayors of each one of those has to be sent a letter, certified, registered, and I don't know where I can, if you have a list of who's on there. The only person that I know for sure is still there is Larry Kesterlaw. I wasn't sure if that was the same mayor, Belleville and
Well, you can,
Taylor, and
yeah.
I don't know if you have a list of that from being on there, like who could. Anyways, we can look that up.
Yeah.
So we can always just call them too.
And they do have a very qualified
Maybe on their website.
new CEO that they just hired, but And I really liked it, but when we found out that I was shocked to know that Willow Run Airport was doing that. We had absolutely no knowledge. So,
Madam Chair? Yeah, I remember hearing about Aerotropolis a lot around the 2009 time and how much it was supposed to not only do some things for, obviously that particular airport, but even, hopefully spur some, goodwill for the neighborhoods surrounding the proposed Aerotropolis proposal. And none of that has came through from Aerotropolis. So I would probably agree at this point, if it's not doing anything for Ypsilanti Township, it's not doing anything for our community, we need to stop paying them.
okay. The next item is request to set a public hearing. Is there any questions on that? Set a public hearing date of July 18th for the creation of special assessment district for Turtle Creek. Is that in Westville? Okay. And the next one's request to set a public hearing date for Ford Lake Village for streetlight special assessment. Are there any questions on that? There's no other business left?
Madam Chair, if I could have a couple of minutes to talk about Tyler Dam, the pond and dam. That'd be okay. I sent an email out to everybody, but it was last minute, and I kind of copied it onto a Word document that I could pass around if I have enough for everybody. I'll bring it forward.
It's a nice staple job, Jeff.
Yeah, I noticed I took the worst one. As you know, the Tyler Dam project that we've been working on for years now, and YCUA is pretty much administering the project. And Dan's was awarded the bid for that work. And we anticipated, that we bid out the whole project. We took out portions that we were going to have the county do from the drain district. And right now we've got a situation where we pulled something out of the project. Dan's is not recognizing that that's the case. They're asking for, they were asking for a $150,000 payment for doing some work that, quite frankly, in our opinion, they didn't do. They're saying they did it, they just did it in a different location. So it's a $250,000 item. They were originally had a pay app for this next pay period for $150,000. Talked to Scott Westover today. They removed that off of this pay app that YCUA has so that they can get paid for the rest of the work that they did, because YCUA was not going to approve it. It is the opinion of YCUA and their engineer Spicer and our engineer Stantec that we should not be paying this. Now the question comes up is, should we pay part of it or a portion of it? And certainly that would become a board decision. There is a stipulation in the contract that they can go to, what's the term in here?
Arbitration.
There's something right before arbitration. Yeah, DRT is what they're calling it, a dispute resolution team. They have already named one person. They're this adamant about it. We have not named anybody, and then there's also the person who would arbitrate it, I guess. Talking to Scott, he said that in the document it does not address if it's binding or not. That would be an agreement before they went to that. This would be a binding decision. Then there is a possibility of arbitration after that. So we could name our person if we'd like. Our engineer recommended that YCUA name the person because they are actually the contracts with them. So I wanted to bring that to at least the board's attention. There's a request. We were already anticipating paying about $300,000 towards this project prior to the drainage district piece coming through. And Dan's has been, I would say, less than easy to be working with. No one's bid on the new county job as well. And I think maybe Dan's has a play factor in that as well. So, at any rate, I don't know if you have questions that maybe I can answer. I don't know all the details. Yes.
I do know that Evan Pratt in his office will be meeting with Dan's Thursday, I think.
Yes.
And we'll get an update from that.
Well, I don't know that Evan will bring up the piece that Dan's asking for. He may be negotiating that next step of the
He
project.
is,
Yeah, we're still going to have at some point the issue of how we're going to resolve this other piece. But yes,
We're going to dispute resolution is what you
that's what we're, I guess, going to be going to.
Jeff, you mentioned, in my recollection was that it was in fact, it's a Yucca contract. We're having a contribution from the township for the portion that is being attributed to us.
That's correct.
So now these different issues, are they entitled for compensation for a road that was or was not, being cleared, et cetera? Who's the best person to represent the authority on that? Is it going to be chosen by, maybe we can talk before the next board meeting, but is this going to be chosen by Scott Westover? I don't know if we could really, we would know right now to weigh in on that issue. It may be kind of difficult for us not knowing all the
Right.
particulars.
I would think it would be somebody that was perhaps. I think we may want to look at who he selected, because there's some history with the person they've selected as well, and maybe that will help us shape the person that that they're going to look at. But to me, I guess I think of someone who was at the table when they talked about what was being pulled out, to verify that that was the case.
Maybe we should talk about that without having
Okay,
a
right.
legal litigation. I don't know if I want to
I agree.
say much more beyond that.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We're going to take a 10-minute break before the board meeting.
Hey, how you doing? What? Okay. Hey, my friend. How you doing, bro? Good. How are you? I tell you, it's been a long time. And you should have never given me your phone number. Yeah. Her daughter just came in just before I came in here, and Fran had her, Lisa is her youngest, other than the adopted one. And so when they graduate, Fran would always. So Fran always does a book for all the kids to graduate. And so she did this book, and it had a whole bunch of pictures when she was in third grade, not 3 years old, but when she was in third grade of her mother, which they didn't have a lot of pictures, I guess. And they had it in storage, and Steve
Always a Saturday before Father's Day. Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a little jazz-like festival. It's part of their community picnic. It's kind of cool. Right. Right.
I wanted to tell you, like, you guys got that little bench thing figured out, but I remember during last year we always went on like a trip for anniversary and stuff, and we went to, we were in California, and we went to this park, and their parks are super great. It was like, they have these things that are like, they're like artsy things. They're like on big poles, and they're just pieces of cloth, so when the sun comes down, it's like, actually, I meant to send you a picture of one, but I'll find it. Actually, yeah, so I'm glad you guys get it, Ben. And also your neighborhood watch thing, I know Alex, I met him. Oh, Alex, at my campaign. Yeah. Oh, that's right, he did. Yeah. Campaign. Yeah. So I'm really proud of you. I gotta find something I apparently lost, so.
I remember Hickey Glenn. He used to walk out the park. And always made the Hollywood. They had art. I remember when Jason Casey dove in. I kept after that boy. I'm always, I look at the good. I look past. I look past. They're all gone. Estes used to be down there. What? Behind. Who are you now? You know what I'm saying? Because not right. When you get going, this one, I'm looking at that. You don't want to be back. You don't mind.
I'll just do the
I had a question for you.
Oh crap, I didn't turn off the recorder, it's just been up there recording away.
I read your
Forgot to turn it
Thanks.
off.
your report, whatever. Yeah, and I was just noticing like the call volumes were like down like 5.6. Is that like normal, or do you think that's because people aren't choosing to call in, or? Okay. Oh. Yeah.
There was a question of domestic violence hotline screen. The ones I brought at one of the meetings several months ago.
It's on
No,
Hunter. It's on the
no,
Hunter
it's
Pageant
the
Hunter.
one, like it's been going on for a million years. I said, can we like send them a resolution or something? Like it's on, every other month it's on.
Well, we talked about it, and you were saying like you don't want to discourage people from calling in if things are
Might be
happening,
the
but
one that might kill her, she might kill someone.
no, but the reason I was asking about the call thing was that I called something in, and just truthfully, every time I call, I'm never like happy. And now I know that they have stressful jobs when they take all those calls in, but they were having like, I know them, they're my neighbors, they literally are always fighting, always. So I called in and I could hear them. I have like a little ranch house and my bedroom's back here and their house is literally like over here. And I could hear them screaming. So I called and I said, I think there's a domestic violence thing happening. They said, is it domestic violence? Like, do you actually know what? And I said, well, they're arguing and fighting in the front yard. And it looks like, a couple of them are getting in their car now and they're going away. And they said, okay, well, then we'll just disregard. And and I know you're busy, but like, they're going to come back. Like, and plus I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but we still, what it is that it's still not, so when they take the report, the state or whoever owns that, they have to show up in court. They got to show up in court.
So this is right here, you was doing the flag, they did criteria, they tried to.
Because it's so poison.
It's really bad. Yeah, so these, they still process.
It's a process. We go to court and try to get them. It's actually sometimes by us just approving the night to go to court. Sometimes it gets people's attention. They do their serious. I got to figure this up. Otherwise, they got to call a lawyer. Judge,
I was gonna ask you about it, so I was trying to wait, and I didn't
This is
know.
always public, or you can always put up on any agenda item.
All the
So we're very informal.
Okay.
Well, I know she knows.
No, I didn't. We just talking about it. No, I ain't something down.
See the tension here, but
I know. We was like,
And that's
be
what-
nice to her.
No.
Okay, look. This one, with the time, okay.
It's over by the, we'll run over, right,
So that's not, okay. So you guys, are you trying to sell this to
What it is, we already had an agreement that they get first rights because they might need it for the development. That expired, so this is like saying you get another year to make up your mind.
Okay, this is, I want to think about, because you know these churches will cover it.
No, it's not needed.
Not the expired. So it's not going to affect them.
No, there's an outside expressway.
We'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider Lakeview Streetlight District Number 207. I declare the public hearing open at 7